What's going on, guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter Stories 2. The squad is here today because it is review discussion time. What's up, guys?
Howdy doody, everybody. How you doing?
I'm back.
Yeah, so everyone's back. We've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter Stories 2 across both Switch and PC. So today, as per tradition, the review embargo has lifted. Ahead of time, we will not be speaking about story spoilers in this, and we will only briefly mention kind of just the concept of Endgame. So there will be no spoilers in this.
We're not
so
allowed to talk about Endgame. The embargo says that we can't go into details, but we can talk about the scope.
Yeah.
So we do want to tell you about the Endgame because, wink, wink. Yeah, if you get what I mean. But
yeah, yeah, there will be no details on that because we can't talk about it just yet. However, stay tuned on the channel later on this week, and we'll have a specific discussion about that stuff. So today is largely speaking just like the general stuff. We'll touch on story, the gameplay mechanics, how we've enjoyed it, the things that we've been up to, you know, just all the kind of stuff you expect. So, I mean, we should just start at the top. How are you guys enjoying the Stories experience? Stories 2, Wings of Ruin.
All right, let me jump in, okay? Because any longer-term viewers will have hopefully watched our Rise discussion, right? And I had a recurring theme in that one to temper expectations, right? And for this one, I'm going to go the opposite way and say, I am loving this game. I will say, take it with a grain of salt. I am a big Pokemon fan. I like the formula of turn-based combat and collecting your Pokemon or your monsters. I did play the first stories a fair bit as well. But I feel like if you're someone that knows what Stories is, you've played the first one, then I think you're going to like this one. I think it's going to have everything that you want it to have. It's going to have extra features in there and different things to sort of keep you on your toes throughout the combat and as you progress through the game. If you're completely new to Stories and you haven't played Stories 1, then I think there's a few things to consider, which Arekkz, I'm sure you want to talk about this as well. Combat being turn-based. I know it's not for everyone. I know it's not Arekkz's favorite, but that is the way that the game plays. I think a lot of people have questions about the depth of the combat and the difficulty going forwards and all this kind of thing. And I think we'll all add our opinion on those topics throughout this. But just to put my opinions out there, I think with the added systems to the combat of targeting particular monster parts, of being able to swap your weapons during combat so that you can, hit with the advantageous weapon depending on what monster part you're targeting, combine that with constantly building kinship gauge and then using it on skills. Going forwards, you have battle companions, so then you have to figure out how you're going to do your double attacks. Are you going to do that with your companion or with your own monster and stuff like that? As well as the fact that obviously if you're familiar with Monster Hunter, monsters usually they have different sort of states, they might enrage and get angry, or they might start flying, and that does mix up what the enemy monster's doing. It changes their types, their moves, who they're targeting, and things like that. So I think speaking for myself, I think that there is a nice sort of difficulty curve going throughout the game, which I think is a lot of people's concern as to whether or not it's just going to be easy mode. That being said, if you're a proper Stories 1 veteran and sweat and you played that game 1,000 hours, then I think it's going to innately be easier. You're going to be fine, right? It's like if you played a Monster Hunter game for 1,000 hours and then a new Monster Hunter game comes out, you're probably going to be okay until you get to high rank or G rank, whenever they add that in those later down the line for those games. So that's just a few of my opinions top level. I just thought I'd put out there because a lot of people, I feel like they didn't believe me when I said to temper expectations for Rise, whereas for Stories, I feel like there's a lot, which I think we'll talk a bit more about as well.
Let's talk about the negatives just in case. Don't think that I don't like this game, by the way, but let's talk about the negatives because people always.
Yeah, 2Six has been loving this game. He's probably played it more than all of us.
I'm early playing it. I'm grinding this game, but let's talk about some of the negatives. It is kind of repetitive and it has a core structure that is go here, fight a couple monsters, and then come back. There isn't that variation in the main campaign, I would say. But do you guys have any of the negative stuff that we can?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main, just
aware of it.
Yeah, just the main thing. Yeah, definitely 100%. I mean, someone might argue they'll be like, well, Monster Hunter in and of itself is repetitive because you just go and hunt the same monsters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's important to kind of touch on that. Yeah, the mission structure is very much like go somewhere, speak to someone. So there's some trouble. You have to go somewhere, fight a monster that is causing said trouble. Go back. There's more trouble, and it's generally the typical flow, which you would expect given that is the crux of the game. The only other kind of negatives are obviously when you're exploring the world, you've got things like evidence to explore and caves and rare dens to explore. They're all very cool. Layout wise, once you've been through quite a few of them, they do start to look and feel very familiar. And I think also given that dens in structure are kind of like dungeons in like RPGs, they're actually quite barren for the most part. You go through, you'll see a few monsters which you can then fight, and otherwise you're basically just running down corridors and choosing pathways and opening chests. So some people might be in that respect. Some people might find those elements a little bit boring. So I think it's just there's just a couple of gameplay elements that are quite repetitive in that respect. However, because the whole game has a bunch of content, a really good story, super fun gameplay, you can overlook that stuff. But I would say those are the kind of things that, to me, especially if you want to sit down for like what I found early on, and this is interesting for me because I'm not normally stories is a strange one for me because I'm not normally someone that plays turn-based games. Generally speaking, I don't like turn-based. It's just not my thing. Apart from Pokemon, which is probably why I also give stories kind of like the acceptance as well, because I'm just like, I like Monster Hunter and I like collecting things.
You like
so
the
I can look past it. Yeah, exactly, right? So I can look past it. But on that point, whereas like when Rise came out, I could just sit and play from morning till evening and just the day disappears. For stories, I play it in slightly smaller chunks because I find gameplay can sometimes get a little repetitive, so I kind of just break it up. But again, it depends on the kind of games you enjoy. So they're just a couple of things. They by no means make it a bad game. It's a fantastic game. We really enjoy it. But it is important just to kind of let you guys know both sides of the coin.
Yeah, let me point out one big thing actually. Okay. The frame rate, dog. Absolute dog, and it doesn't get like any better, but I haven't really said that on any videos because I was hoping that there was a day one patch that could come along and remedy that, and obviously we don't have that because the game hasn't necessarily even released it yet. And I know from a developer standpoint that those performance patches can come in even at the last minute or like even a week or so later. And there is rumors of like a Switch Pro on the horizon, so maybe they were always developing it with that in mind or whatever. So if you have an issue with the frame rate, then you could always pick it up on PC, because I know we did a PC comparison video, so you can check out the differences.
Yeah, on that point though, it's interesting. I mean, definitely. Again, this is important to note because there are, some people are more notice that stuff a lot more. Like I've always notoriously been someone that just doesn't always notice frame rate. I obviously did notice it because obviously I started playing on PC, then I played the demo, so obviously I did notice that quite abruptly. However, I will say that because I do intend to make the Switch my main platform anyway, and like playing the demo on there. At first, it was a big like, whoa, okay, I can notice this. I have gotten used to it, and I feel like you can get away with it and forgive it because of the kind of gameplay it is. If this was a real-time Monster Hunter game, we were playing like Rise and we had to quickly move, roll around to like dodge monster attacks like in real time, I would be like, okay, this is bad. However, because most of the time, you're in a turn-based environment, you're selecting your moves, yeah, it would be nice to kind of see it running super smooth. But I feel like once you've played it for enough and you kind of run around, you kind of, or at least for me, I've kind of just gotten so used to it that it just doesn't bother me now.
Yeah, it's bad, but it's not impactful because it's an RPG game and you're not really doing like time sensitive stuff. So if you're worried about getting your like combos off in a turn-based game, I don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me jump in with a few negatives. You guys have basically discussed them. The frame rate. Well, first of all, my major gripes with the game is the performance, right? But if there's one thing that like Rise and all of the comments of previous videos where we talked about Rise and its visuals or its performance, I feel like I've learned from that people generally don't mind performance issues or lesser visuals on the Switch console, given that it's a handheld. So I think that, like you say, given that it's turn-based combat, you don't need those frames during like the moments that matter when you're winning battles or capturing monsters, that it's not too big of a deal. On the flip side, if someone is playing the game on PC like you initially were, Arekkz, then it's not going to be an issue for them, right? And I know a lot of people are looking forward to playing this on PC, so considering that is literally my main issue with the game, having played it on Switch, if you're a PC player, that's literally not going to be a problem at all. However, this is a game that is very nice to play on handheld. It's like playing a Pokemon game. You enjoy playing it out and about in the moments when you can, or if you're at home, it's just nice to be able to do it on the sofa, like in your family environment, or just wherever you're chilling in your bed, or whatever like that. So I think there's it's like PC, good performance, Switch, that comfort, but you will get those frame issues. But to go back on the the repetitive point about this game, I don't know if it's just that I love the grind, or if it's that I'm a Pokemon veteran, and so this sort of repetitive combat system that is basically similar in Pokemon doesn't bother me. I found that the opposite to what you said, Arekkz, where you play it, you're enjoying it in smaller stints. I can load this game up in the morning, and then it's freaking 9 o'clock at night, and I've been farming all day, and I've just lost the day, but I've got loads of genes or loads of new monsters, So I think it really depends on the person and their taste in games as to whether or not this is going to be repetitive for them. Because I feel like the things that are repetitive in this are also the rewarding things that you're going to want to do, like farming genes, like getting your new monsters, getting your perfect rainbow monster that you want to have in your party and stuff like that. And that won't be for everyone, but for the people that do enjoy it, I think that is going to be a good thing for them, if that makes sense.
Definitely, by pointing out that it's repetitive, I'm just saying that because I know there's going to be people out there that dislike that type of gameplay, but for me, someone who likes this game, it's part and parcel of the charm of the game as well, if you get what I'm saying. So I really enjoy it. I kind of expected what was coming down the line, and I was I'm looking forward to fighting this next boss, because I know it's going to be something cool in this area that I know I can kind of guess what it is or whatever. So I really enjoyed it.
No, it is really good. I think that's the important thing again. We just to kind of because I feel like it's just always important to state this stuff, because sometimes people get a little bit lost in when you start talking about negative things, wait, do these guys not like it? We love this game, right? We really enjoy it. So that's just kind of, but we wanted to sort of give you guys a complete
even if
picture.
we didn't like it, constructive criticism about the things that you love is super important. So people can say
definitely
that stuff, and just because you love a game, you don't need to cry if someone says something bad about it.
It's true.
I want to put this out there in the video because I feel like a lot of other people will share this opinion with me, and I'm interested to see if that will be the case. I think this is the only game that is actually decently going against Pokemon. It is similar formula. You're capturing your team, you're building it, you're juicing them up by channeling them into each other, and then it's turn-based combat, rock, paper, scissors, with the depth of switching weapons and all that kind of stuff, and different statuses that you can deal. And this is the only game that I feel is actually having an amazingly good shot against that formula, because there's not really another competitor for it. There have been other similar games like Temtem on Steam, for example, but that's not going against the handheld audience and stuff like that, and I feel like not everyone would have played it. It was an early access game and things like that. So I am really interested to see what people think when they pick it up and they get into the meat of the game and they realize that this has actually got a lot to it. And if you are an average Pokemon fan, unless it's literally just the fact that it's Pokemon that's making you play it, I think you're going to really enjoy Stories 2.
Yeah, I definitely think one of the things about Stories 2 as well. If you're if you're an existing Monster Hunter fan, or if you're someone that has always the idea of Monster Hunter, but maybe maybe you just didn't click with the traditional game. I think there's a lot to be enjoying this. It's almost Monster Hunter Stories 2 is almost like what Monster Hunter Generations did for Monster Hunter, when it was kind of the best hits game, right? When Generations came out and everyone loved it because they were it's just got every single monster, right? Obviously, we're not going to talk about all the list of the things here, but there's so much in this game. There are so, you guys know that from if you play the demo, you just look at the monster pages, and even though they're question marks, there's so many things in here. So I feel even if you enjoy different aspects of the game, you're someone like me who isn't typically a turn-based person, but you still, as a Monster Hunter fan, there's just so many things to love about it, or you like it from a strategy point of view, this is packed full of content. This is going to keep people busy for quite some time. You can easily get. You guys, how if you were to golden line it, how long would you guys? People always want to know this kind of stuff.
30 to 35 hours is probably if you're sweating through the game and you're not clapped or whatever, and you know what's going on with the combat, you can probably get it done within 30.
Yeah, so like between let's say sort of like an average
if you're a good player,
30 to 40.
I think hold on.
Speed running it basically.
I think that you are correct.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be like 1% or less of people.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that is if you are only interested in finishing the game and nothing else, and you're also very familiar with the monsters and the attacks they're going to do, and so that you can beat bosses relatively easily. I think for your average player who is going to take a bit more time going through, capture the monsters that they want while enjoying the story, I think you're looking at 50, 60, maybe
50,
even
60
70 hours.
Yeah, and that's only just sort of getting like, as we're sort of speaking about playing through organically to kind of complete the story. That's, it's not over then anyway. So you've got stuff to do. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to enjoy in it. I think that's there's just so much charm in this game. I mean, like there's so many things that I really do like enjoy about it anyway. Like just from combat things to like seeing all the different monsters, just all the areas. Like I love the visuals for this game as well. Like they definitely nailed the style. Like if you look at the if you saw the recent stream they did going from like Stories 1 to Stories 2, like they've got a really good kind of visual style for it. I'm super pleased. Like you guys, like how are you guys on that one?
On that topic, for me, like the visual style is very nice. That you say, just exploring and going around is just really nice in the style that they've chose. But it's also the fact that they've made like a living world in a way. You can go through the map. You've got like a monster flying overhead. You've got another. You turn a corner. There's some trees. There's another type of monster there. You gather some mushrooms. Then there's like and it feels like a living Monster Hunter world. Whereas when in the main series games, it can feel like that at times, but it's always like, the monster's like moving from one zone to another, and I can see the mechanics behind some of it and how the monsters are programmed to move around. Whereas in this, they sort of do roam in their own way, but it just feels there's wider open areas and it feels like it's got life in it, which is really cool for a game like this, and I really like that about it.
Oh, speaking of life in the areas as well, a fun little thing that kind of some people will rejoice because in Rise when they were like, you no longer need hot and cold drinks, and people were like, no. Well, here's some news for you. You need to. I mean, you don't actually use drinks, you use mist now, but you need hot and cold mist now. So you know what? For the first time, like I've been playing Monster Hunter for a very long time. Like cold drinks and hot drinks are in my blood, but at the same time, not having to remember to do it in Rise, I was kind of okay with that. So then when they were like, you must remember to bring some hot mist with you because it's cold, I'm like, oh, no.
I forget every time.
I forget every time, and then it's like, you've missed a turn because you haven't had a hot mist. I'm like, no! So that's back. That's cool.
Yeah. For people that haven't played Stories 1, I'm not someone that played Stories 1, both these guys have. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I think the game does a great job of kind of telling the backstories of characters that you interact with and kind of telling back to what Stories 1 was and kind of filling in the gaps that you need to. And it is quite a self-contained story game. So if you want to play this, you can play this without like having a worry of like you're feeling like you're missing something or you're jumping on the wrong game or anything like that. So I think that's important to get out there so that you guys know that you can pick this up without missing some type of content and feeling like you have to go back through and play the whole of Stories 1.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
100%. I just want to jump in as well, just to go back to our topic of the hours played, right?
Yeah.
For me personally, I took my time a bit more. Like I wasn't just golden lining it. I was capturing the monsters I wanted. I farmed a little bit here and there, and I would also say I didn't struggle with the bosses. I didn't hit any major walls because I was doing that farming and that getting the powerful monsters along the way to help. And for me, it actually took on the 60-hour mark to finish it.
Oh, nice.
But furthermore than that, I'm now at 130 hours, and I still haven't done everything I want to. I still haven't completed everything. So I would say there's still a lot more to do. Which I think is crazy. Like, it's like we look at. I'm thinking because it's fresh and it's the last Monster Hunter game. I'm thinking about Rise. Maybe 50 or 60 hours in, I had already finished everything, like literally everything.
Was it?
And it was just about.
Was it 30 to? It was like 30 hours we were done, right? Because remember
we done like the main story. Yeah, we done the main story stuff.
Rise, and we were like, oh, and we're like. So I don't know. Like by 30 hours in Rise, I felt like we started making our own fun and like trying out weapons. In this, I don't want to say too much, but I'm like, 110 hours to 120 hours in now, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm
still
like,
finding
what?
new things.
So yeah.
Yeah. So speaking on that, because I think one of the things it's like important to touch on now is kind of talk about like gameplay, because obviously that's like one of the underpinning things. And like I want to speak specifically about combat, because I think combat is. I mean, I keep learning new things. Obviously, I was chatting to you guys literally this morning, and there's more things that I'm picking up. But it's funny because you look at it from the like, say if you're someone that's never played stories before, you look at it on the website and they explain it on a kind of very sort of top level thing. They're like, all right, combat works around simple rock, paper, scissors. You know, power beats technical, technical beats speed, speed beats power. You know, you do this and you've got a few different attacks. And then, so on the surface, if you just look at it through promotional materials and things like that, it seems quite basic, almost like, hey, here's like my first RPG kind of thing. Like, you know, moves are quite simple. But there is genuinely so much depth to it that you, like, for the first half of the game, you can be forgiven for kind of getting through, not necessarily knowing all the mechanics and just kind of unga-bungering your way through. I did that. Then you kind of get to the point about partway through the game, and you will hit a wall where it's like, oh, if you don't actually realize the depth that the combat system has, then you may struggle a bit. And I think that's where things really start to shine. You start to realize, oh wait, this isn't just rock, paper, scissors. There's actually, you know, for what is on the surface maybe seemingly like a kid's game, is actually quite deep. And I think that's really important. I think it's kind of, they strike that good balance of like, it's relatively easy to pick up, but there is a degree of mastery there.
But like any RPG or turn-based RPG is usually rock, paper, scissors anyway. I don't know why people like drill into it being like rock, paper, scissors when, like, if you're playing Final Fantasy game or any other turn-based game, is you're doing magic to counter some type of like elemental stuff.
I guess
or you're
it's
doing like blocking,
probably,
or you're doing like an attack during that time or whatever. And
I think the main reason is just the way that it's like visually displayed, because you're right, like rock, paper, scissors is a format that underpins basically all RPGs, but I think in some RPGs it is kind of it is like the foundation, but it's not like overtly put in your face, whereas this is like, here's a very simple diagram, twist this to tell you which one is going to be, so I think it, from an outset point of view, like it looks very like, oh, this is simplified, but it's true when you say like, actually the core mechanic is something you do in every RPG. So
yeah, the rock, paper, scissors is a layer on top, because you have the rock, paper, scissors, but then you also have your attacks. And if you start to PvP, like me and Paradise have been doing a lot of, you'll notice that like the right attack at the right time, doing the right thing. Do you use items? Do you use this? It's like like the rock, paper mechanic of technical attacks and power attacks and speed attacks are just a layer on top of the actual core traditional battle system that you find in most RPGs.
Let me just jump into PvP a sec as well, because I was so curious how PvP would play out in this. I've done a fair amount of PvPing in Pokemon as a comparison.
Yeah.
Now, in Pokemon, this is a big deal. In Pokemon, when you swap a monster in PvP, that is your turn. You spent your action swapping out your monster, so you don't get walloped by whatever. Like, you know, he's pulled out an element that you're weak against, you swap out to a tanky type that will tank that and it'll be fine, and then you have a turn to reply. In Stories 2, you swap out a monster, you still get to attack. And for me, this is a huge deal. You have a monster out who is, you know, weak to your opponent's type. Do you keep him in and just like basically lose that exchange no matter how it goes down because it's a weakness element, or do you swap out to one that they're weak to and deal that back to them? But then your opponent might be playing 3D chess and they might expect that to come, so then they're going to swap out to another one, or maybe they're just going to hold that one in place and do an attack type that's going to counter yours and win that head to head and gain that kinship gauge. And that's just one layer. There's like there's different item loadouts. You have your weapons and your armor to pick that all have skills on them. Obviously, gene like splicing your monster to like a good PvP setup is an entirely new layer as well. Do you slot all damage, all defense, status resistances, stuff like this? So for me, the PvP has actually been super enjoyable and it has had some good depth, and that is just with the two of us PvPing, which is me and 2Six. Like, who knows what the meta is going to become when people start playing this, you know?
It's weird that we've been playing PvP, just us two, for like the last 2 weeks. It's like, it's rare that you get a multiplayer game where there's no one else playing on the servers, but you're enjoying it like exponentially because you're just having fun. And I can't wait to see, like, we haven't been able to experience co-op 2v2 battles yet. when you guys have your teams, we're taking challenges. I'm ready to body you guys. Come on the game, like. So I want to learn the strategies. If anyone knows like a bunch of the strategies from like Stories 1 when it comes to like PvP, then just hit me up and like tweet at me and stuff like that, because I want to know all of this stuff. But PvP is like another aspect of the game that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much, and everything across the board from Stories 1, just from someone that's been observing from like, oh, I've seen it but not necessarily played it. It seems improved across the board. Like there's a level of polish and a level of like passion that you can see that's been put through to this game. I just want to move on to like the story at this moment. I think that's the thing that's actually gonna like grip a lot of people, because for me, I feel like this is the most realized I've seen a story in a Monster Hunter game the whole time. Like I feel like the world's alive. There was a bit of emotion for the characters. It was like, even though it was more of like a Pixar kind of kids type story where it's kind of like it hits those basic story beats, I feel like it does a very good job of realizing the Monster Hunter world and the potential and the lore and all of that stuff. And if you're a Monster Hunter fan, I think that this is one that you need to pick up just for the story, just for the last bit. There's like a really cool bit in there that as a Monster Hunter fan, you do not want to miss.
I was surprised by how good the story was. And like, yes, it's generic in some ways, but is it the fact that I'm a Monster Hunter fan speaking, or is it the fact that the story was actually good and there was like emotional moments and cool moments? The soundtrack of the game like pulls you in, and we don't even need to go into more detail than that because we don't want to spoil the story for anyone.
No.
So don't miss out on the story. But also another topic I wanted to talk about was quality of life, because this game is full of it. To be honest, the hot drink, cold drink is probably the only non-quality of life thing in the game, right?
Yeah, but it's a mechanic of the game, though, right? It's like, if you're in that area, it's cool.
You can literally, the resources that you gather along the way, you make into donuts, which is like a healer. It's like a potion from Pokemon, but you can just press left bumper and it will use your donuts and fully heal anyone that needs it. You can fast travel from anywhere. You can speed up the time it takes to do your animations in battle. You can skip the cutscene of your kinship if you want to, because like you've seen it 100 times at endgame, you know. So I am impressed by the amount of like quality of life that is in there. I didn't feel like there was anything that was like really detrimental to like, or annoying, that I was like, you know, bashing my head against the wall too much.
Let me jump in there. There is something that annoying. Every time that you walk into a cave, like, Naviru stops you for like half a second, which sounds like a small thing, but after playing hours and hours and hours, it's needless. And the thing that makes it even more needless is it doesn't happen in co-op. Like, in co-op, you can literally just continue to walk through. But in single player, it's like, there isn't a monster in the nest. And then you have to stop for half a second and then continue walking.
Yeah, every single nest you go to, it's just like, I can see there's no monster there, Naviru. I don't need you to tell me there's no monster there. Yeah, that is true. And the same for when you discover the fast travel thing. He's like, look, there's a... I'm like, yes, I know what this is. That's why I'm running towards it. But yeah, I mean, they're super minor things, but... no, that's.
I think
that's
like
cool.
the stopping and the speech thing is like a carryover from the first game, because that was definitely a thing in that. Maybe that's why I'm just still used to it as well. One thing I really like as well that is a difference from the first game is that the areas are a lot more open, and even a small thing like the dens. In the first game, when you went to the nest portion of the den, that was its own instance that you like loaded into. So in Stories 2, you know, when you leave with the egg and you have to like sort of walk into the corridor until the pop-up happens and you can leave. In the first game, that point in which the leave pops up was like the edge, like that was where you would load into the next zone, sort of thing. So
right.
I just like how expanded it is from the first game in so many ways, from the art style to the fact that it's more open, to the quality of life changes, to the improvements to the channeling system and the genes and the way that all of that works, which I think a lot of people will have questions about as well. And I think we'll be going more in detail into like the genes into like other videos and things across our channels.
Yeah, I think the breadth and width of this game is like just massive in terms of the content, and something it's a complete contrast to what we've got with, like, if you are someone that feels like we didn't get enough content with Rise, this you're going to be very happy with the amount of stuff that you have to do in this game. After the time that you even complete it, and even if after like just your whole story campaign, there's always like new monsters there, and like all the monsters are kind of different as well. There are ones that are kind of like different variations or subspecies of the same monster, or like variants or like deviants or whatever, but most of the time it feels like you go to a new area, you're encountering a huge new set of monsters, and you're like, oh, I'm going to capture this one, I'm going to go get this this monster because I know it's going to do well here, I'm going to upgrade this monster, and you're going to need multiple of them anyway if you really want to get into the mechanics of the game and like changing like genes and stuff like that. So there's always something to kind of really do, and even once you get through all of the campaign solo stuff, there's co-op and PvP stuff to do. So you have those missions, and I'm just surprised by how long this game is, and I think it's almost because I was expecting it to just be a campaign game that I played for about 40 hours or so, or 44 hours is probably the time that I had in my head, because that's the normal length of like RPGs. But I'm here 110 hours in, and I'm just like, is this the amount of time that I was expecting to play like other games this year that came out? And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I thought this was the game that I was going to put down and just be done with it. That I'm pleasantly surprised.
What do you guys it'd be interesting to kind of like touch on a bit more on co-op actually, because obviously I play predominantly on PC, so co-op is obviously largely speaking being done by you guys, but like, because PvP was present in Monster Hunter Stories 1, but co-op expeditions are the new thing. So how do you feel like they hold up? Like, are they still an exciting thing to go and do?
It would
or
be
do
nice
you see
to have like a full open world like thing if you could roam into the zones and then go into dens, but these are like more like dens. They're just basically dens or fights basically. So I would like to see it more expanded out, but it's still fun to have the ability to do that.
Yeah,
also,
so
on that, just to expand on that conversation, me and 2Six have done a lot of co-op stuff where we're like talking on mics, but the other day we actually did one where we were not on mics, so we had to rely on the in-game features to communicate, which is a sticker system. Any Monster Hunter fan knows it. And I have to say, I was surprised at how enjoyable it was.
Yeah.
You know, you spin around to get someone's attention, pop up a little sticker like, hey, over here. In combat, it's like, you got this, and then stuff like that, you know? So I was surprised by how just taking away that layer of like having a mic in Discord with someone, it was still very playable and very enjoyable. But I will also say that co-op is very rewarding if you are investing your time in the right places. So it's like co-op is worth doing, not just for having fun, but also for the rewards that you get.
Yeah, I think this is just a good game. It's not even just a good Monster Hunter game. I feel like if you're an RPG fan and you haven't experienced Monster Hunter at all, this might be the stepping point for you if you are into like RPGs and turn-based combat, or just story-based games and you just want something to play for this year. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised by like the level of polish and the diversity of like content that they have in terms of the monsters and what you actually want the core gameplay is that you want to do, basically. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, yeah. I think that's kind of a good chunk of stuff covered. Oh yeah.
Let's talk about the difficulty, because I know a load of people really want to know about this. Like, does the game get harder? I think this is probably, for me, I think that the game gets harder, but maybe Paradise can go a bit more like in depth about this one and talk about it.
So we briefly mentioned it at the start. Then Arekkz, you briefly mentioned it sort of midway about the halfway point. I would say, if on one hand, if you've played Stories 1 100,000 hours and you know every monster's attack and probably what they're going to do, it's going to be easier. If you don't know that stuff, that I feel like the difficulty curve is still pretty good. You're going to get to grips with things pretty quickly. Then you're going to be thrown against monsters that are going to sort of change what you're used to happening. So it's like, oh, that threw me off. Now I'm going to have to remember who I'm fighting when they enrage, whether they go like power, whether they go speed, that sort of stuff. And then you have like another layer on top of that, which is bosses when they're rage raid, and then they just start going on some nonsense where they're just spamming AoEs like back to back, and that's when the difficulty starts coming in. So you have to prepare for what a monster will possibly do the first time you encounter it, and then even if you have failed a few times, you know when those nasty attacks are coming up, and you can plan around that by like doing evasion skills or putting like heal over times on your party with like hunting horn and stuff like that. So I think people are worried about difficulty, and it will be down to the individual and what your experience is with these kind of games. But I do still think that there is a nice difficulty curve, and as you get further and further throughout the game and into the end game that we'll talk about in other videos, I think the difficulty is there personally.
If you're someone who is like versed in turn-based games, I would say that the game presents a challenge. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't play turn-based games, then I will say that the game will get difficult for you. And like I almost kind of used Arekkz as kind of a guinea pig for this, and he was having trouble with a boss fight. So I definitely feel like if you're just trying to unga bunga it through like your fights, then you're gonna have like some type of difficulty there.
Yeah, definitely don't like definitely don't play the game like me. Basically, like I did the same in Pokemon. I'm like, I find a Pokemon that I like, and although I build a team, I basically just use my lead Pokemon for the majority of the game. And it's like, right, look, I've for the longest time had this theory in Pokemon that like if you can burn everything, irrespective of an element, and if you can't, you punch it. Right, that's it. That's how I complete Pokemon. I applied that logic to Monster Hunter Stories. For the most part, it's got me about halfway through the game. But yeah, more recently, I've had to actually be like, you know what? Let me use the full breadth of my team. Let me actually play the game as it is intended. Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I think it's really good, because I think I'm a really good kind of barometer for like, because I've heard a lot of people that some people have sort of said similar things. They're like, oh, I've seen Stories are really cool, but I'm not really a turn-based guy. I'm not a turn-based guy, and I am still really enjoying the game. I would definitely say yeah, so I think it's like a good thing to sort of jump into, but do not sleep on don't kind of go in thinking the mechanics are just like super simple and just like ignore a lot of them, because yeah, you do need to take advantage of that as you get towards the later part of the game.
So there's one little thing just to squeeze in, which people will know from the demo. But in Pokemon, you had to use like this particular like item in order to like get shared XP across your party, because you just mentioned it, like just using your lead Pokemon, and then your lead Pokemon's the only one that levels up, right? So then the rest of your party start to suck later on, and you can't use them. Whereas in Stories, everything's getting XP. Things that are like lower leveled will get like bonus modifiers to sort of catch up, and I really like that about that's just one more quality of life thing. I
really like actually, yeah, the fact that it's like, I'll catch like a brand new monster and it will be level 1, but I put it in my team, go into one hunt, just don't even use it, and already it's like level 10, next one, level 20. It very quickly catches up. So yeah, if you find new monsters, then basically just throw them in your team, and then you can, within a few hunts, they'll basically be in a usable state. So I do like that a lot, because yeah, the worst thing would always be in Pokemon, it's like, this guy's level 1, it's going to take me ages to get to like level 60, 70. I'm like, no. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. This time, I think we're at the end. But yeah, that was a little kind of rundown on how we've been enjoying it so far. Obviously, there's lots of stuff we want to share with you guys. We'll have some more gameplay on the channel later on this week, and some guides, obviously, as we start getting too close to it. If there are things you guys want to know specifically about, let us know in the comments down below. Things that, questions you have, or things that you want to see, and we'll obviously try and answer them or spin them up as videos. But of course, don't forget as well to stay tuned, because 2six and Paradise will both also have videos on their channels, which of course are always linked down below. Every single video, all the links are in the description. What are you guys planning on this week? Anything that the guys can look forward to?
Let me ask the people the question of the day.
Oh, so the question of the day.
The question of the day first is, what will be your Monsty team? I need to know the rundown. Like, what is going to be your main Monsty that you're going to have in your party? So drop that in the comment section.
Tell us so we can build against it for PvP.
You're going to get ruined. So videos going up on my channel, I will say that there is obviously going to be my impressions. I think we're going to talk about why you shouldn't miss this game as a Monster Hunter fan. And we're going to have some continued more gameplay. I feel like I'm going to go through and do a bunch of videos on kinships and some of the cool stuff that we've seen so far.
Yeah, and then over on mine, again, we're going to talk impressions, we'll have tips, guides for capturing specific monsters that I think you guys will not want to miss out on and stuff like that. So stay tuned.
Sweet. Well, there we have it. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
If you want to catch more from us at Arekkz Gaming, don't forget you can catch the guys TwoSixNine and Paradise Central streaming over on Twitch weekdays, playing a variety of games. If you guys want to jump in, tune in, watch, and even join in, then make sure you check them out. The links to those are in the description box down below, and of course you can join the Discord to get involved in all of the discussions.